Hi, friends. Welcome to the Making Spaces podcast. I am the co-host, Sarah Heath, and this is my other co-host,
Josie Jimenez. That's me.
You notice I'm so awkward. Like, I never know how to intro you. Like, I might be the worst hype person.
Yeah, I never know how to just say my name. So I say in the house or that's me. Or...
Yeah. We actually had to edit out your last member.
Oh, yeah. I really did not know how to start it off. So I was like, this is Josie in this bitch.
Yeah, it was classic. We are excited today to be joined by, I should say, Laura Foster, who is basically a coach for folks, but it's like soul-centered coaching. And we've had a couple coaches on before for people who work with entrepreneurs and kind of make space for people's work. But Laura's got kind of a unique perspective in that she's worked in the industry of design for years and years and years. And through her own process that I'll let her tell a little bit more later, kind of realized it wasn't enough. She had reached the pinnacle. She had gotten to the top that we're all working so hard to get to and thought, nah. And then trying to figure out what does that mean and how can she help other people if they're feeling a little bit that way. So she actually has a master's degree, which I think is incredible, in spiritual psychology, which I think is such a neat thing to sort of integrate in. She's opened a bunch of businesses herself, so she knows what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And more than that, she's also my friend. So she's worked with a bunch of incredible people, from folks at NBC, Netflix, all those kind of things. Her resume is incredible, but she's also just a great friend and someone everyone should have to bounce their ideas off and make space for themselves. So one of my favorite things she says is that you are a human being, not a human doing, which she has to say to me often. As an Enneagram 3, I really like to be a human doing. So Laura, you said you listened to the show, so you're a little bit cheating, but the question we ask everyone to start the show is, where is one of your favorite spaces and why?
And that's such an interesting question, and I can have 100 different answers to that. But my favorite space is, I grew up in the mountains in Montana, and for about 6 years when I was in grade school, we lived right on a lake in the mountains, and our picture window in our dining room looked over the lake. And so in the wintertime with all the snow, it was so magical. So I don't go back to Montana very often, but every time I go back there, I go to that house, to that backyard, to that view. And there's something just really expansive about that for me.
Well, and Montana is like a magic place. Mm-hmm. Josie, have you ever been to Montana?
The Midwest is not a place I have ventured to, unfortunately.
Do we call that the Midwest? It's like up.
Well, it is. It is.
Okay. This is an ongoing conversation with Josie and I, because I'm like, where is this magical Midwest everyone talks about? Because I don't understand it.
Yeah, I know like West Coast, which Colorado kind of counts, I guess. The Southwest, Midwest, and then the East Coast, I think, is the regions. But I have not ventured to the Midwest. There's not a lot of Mexican food there, so I don't know if I want to go.
That's literally your sole judgment on whether you want to go to a space or not?
Yes, absolutely. 100% as a Mexican. Yes.
There's definitely more Mexican food now than there used to be. I will say that.
In Montana.
Yeah, everywhere. I've heard that. I heard Montana's dope, though. Montana is on my bucket list of places to go.
I actually think you would love it just as a photographer, because there's colors. I don't know if you'll agree with me here, Laura. There's colors in Montana that you don't see other places. Like something that happens with the light. I think Michigan's a little this way too. There's like this magic thing that happens with the light in Montana.
Well, Montana is big sky country. It says so on every single license plate in Montana. And the skies are spectacular. There's something about the air, the light, the angle of the sun. Like you can see that in Paris. The light in Paris is unique, I think, to Paris and San Francisco. There are certain places in the world that just have a quality about them doesn't happen anywhere else.
Well, I find it really fascinating just knowing you and knowing that you were a designer for many years and worked in design for a pretty well-known label in New York, right?
No, in Los Angeles.
You were in Los Angeles. Okay. Yeah. But I think of you as a city girl. So when you were speaking, people who are watching this on YouTube can't see my reaction, but I was like, you're from Montana? I just can't because I know you as like the black coats, the like big scarves. Like I can't really see that in Montana. So I kind of would love to start out with, as we talk about how you've become a space maker for others, but how did you get from Montana to designing in LA? Because that's a big part of your story.
Well, my father worked for the government, so we moved around a lot. But even in Montana, I started making clothes for my dolls when I was 6 or 7 years old. My mother will help me. So that fascination
Same.
with fashion started really, really early for me. And we lived in Montana, North Dakota. We went to Sacramento, California. That was really my first introduction to a big city or a suburban area. And then my parents went back to the Midwest and I went to college in Montana. And then I've lived in a lot of places since. But that spark of, I really want to do something creative with my life and I really love fashion, it started in Montana.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that a place that maybe most people might not think of as a spark place actually was for you. And did you envision as a kid that you'd end up in a metropolitan like LA?
I didn't. And that's one of the things that's really special to me about going back to that place in Montana is I had no idea what my life was going to look like because my circumstances were so small. You know, Montana, we were in sort of a rural area outside Helena. And the people in my like extended family didn't go places or move places or do things. And I really thought that was going to be my life. And it hasn't been.
Yeah, I think that as a city girl, somebody who grew up in LA her whole life, I think that growing up in a place like Montana probably leaves you so much room to dream because you don't have the LA hustle and bustle. Yeah, like everybody in LA is beautiful and successful, allegedly, right? So you feel so small in this big pond, but when you're in Montana, everybody has so much upward mobility, so much potential, so much room. The open skies are there to dream, right?
There's a lot of places to go when you come from a place that's small, but the issue is that a lot of people don't even know what's possible. And of course, I grew up before the internet, so a little bit different. Some of the people probably listening to this, but I didn't know what was possible for me until I got out in the world and discovered, oh, wow, I can do anything I want. I mean, certainly I knew that I could move anywhere I wanted because we moved around so much when I was a child and I did that. But I really created a life for myself based on what I wanted, which is very different than a lot of people who are from where I'm from.
I think that's something I've been processing in my own life as someone who has lived in multiple countries and lived in multiple areas. I don't know if it felt because I grew up in a tiny town on a big lake, and the world was huge. But I think it was too many possibilities. I don't know if either of you have experienced that. I'm almost jealous. I joke around with her so much, but I love that Josie loves LA and I like to pick on her about it because I would love to have absolute affinity for one space. Because anytime I'm talking about, oh, I might move to Oregon or I'm thinking about doing this, Josie's like, why? She just is so that's not LA. She's so faithful to its place and space. And I think part of the reason I've been a space maker is that I couldn't figure out, and still to this day, I'm trying to figure out where's my space. I'm always fascinated by people who also come from just such a different environment to where they end up.
Yeah, and I resonate with that so much because I'm thinking exactly the same thing. I don't need to be in LA. I'm not in a corporate job anymore. I can live anywhere. And I'm thinking, where do I want to go? And for me, it's I want to go to a place next that feels like home. The only place I've ever been in my life where I moved that felt like home was San Francisco. When I moved to San Francisco 20 some years ago, and there was so much diversity and everyone was accepted, I felt this sense of home that I never felt in LA. Yeah.
I had the opposite feeling. I lived in San Francisco for the summer once, and I was like, your girl is not a city girl. I can parallel park beyond belief because of living in San Francisco, but I did not love, I worked primarily in with those experiencing homelessness, and they were fantastic organizations I work with, loved the people, did not love the wow, it is so anxiety provoking just to go to the grocery store because everyone and their mom seemed to be, stressed out trying to get to the grocery store. So I think it's those little things that you kind of take note of as you go along. I think as you figure out what home feels like. And as we're in the holiday-ish season, you can see both Josie and I have Christmas trees behind us. The thing that kind of is, I think we're all looking for home, and Hallmark has that figured out. And, all these things are trying to sell us this thing. And so I think part of the story that I find so fascinating with yours is in some ways you were a Hallmark movie. I mean, you were from Montana. Did you study design in college?
No, I have a college degree in mathematics.
Oh my God.
Yes. But this is why it makes sense. I was in a lot of engineering disciplines, and then I just ended up with so many math credits that I took the math degree to get out. I knew I wanted to be in fashion, but engineering and mathematics is about problem solving. And I think that's what a lot of design is about. It's about creating, it's about figuring things out, it's about building things. So I see similarities in the two.
We are only laughing because you're like the third person we've talked to in design who started out, and like I'm thinking about even like Bloom's Done Right. What did she start out in?
She was a business major. Now she's a florist.
Right. And then, in fact, we talked to someone who she is an engineer, but started doing fashion design because it was like exactly what you're talking about. This Anna Kraft who invented Xena workwear. She's like, there's a problem and I could solve it. And I think that's a unique thing. And design is actually a problem in some ways that needs to be solved. And I've never thought about it in that way until this moment. Laura Foster, bringing in the wisdom. So then how did you end up in LA? Because then I think part of the story is then how did you end up with the job that everyone thought everyone should stay in forever? And then what made the transition and how did you get to where you are now? That's a lot of questions. Just go.
Yeah. And I'll try to be succinct here. So I knew I wanted to be in fashion. I spent all of my 20s traveling around, living in some fabulous places, working in restaurants and art galleries. And I ended up in Maui for 2 years. And Maui Community College had a fashion program. So I thought I need to get serious about my career because I was 28. So I started fashion school. I moved to San Francisco to help a couple of friends of mine from college start a business. Ended up working for Susie Tompkins' daughter, Summer. She had this little hat and handbag company. I went in as a production assistant, which is watching cut tickets and moving bolts of fabric around, and worked my way up to a design job with her. Moved to Oxnard from San Francisco for design director job, thinking I'm going to move to the country and make vinegars in my kitchen. And it was such culture shock to move to Oxnard from San Francisco. It wasn't for me. And then I decided to take a year off and write a book. I was going to go to Colorado and stay with my sister, and 9/11 happened, and everybody started screaming at me, you'll never get a job in fashion again. You're in a superfluous industry. And so I took a job in LA that was supposed to be for 3 months, and it ended up being 17 years I was with that job. And I did reach the pinnacle in this career that I'd set out to excel in. I worked for a good company. I was making good money. I traveled well. And then in 2007, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it forced me to really look at everything that was going on in my life. And I realized this job that I was supposed to love, that was supposed to bring me so much satisfaction, I hated it. I wasn't happy. It wasn't making me happy. I didn't get married. I didn't have kids because I was so focused on career. And with a diagnosis like that, it's like, well, now what do I do? How do I get myself out of this? I'm already so entrenched in this career. I don't know what to do next. I didn't know anything about coaching at the time. Certainly, I could have hired a coach at that time. It would have helped me so much, but I had to figure out a different path for myself.
I mean, I think it's the story of so many people, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have been sold this story for so long that if you get the job, then you're going to then you'll get the happiness. And you just can kind of keep spiraling around the human doing thing. Like, okay, but I've got what? The next thing, the next achievement, that is when I am going to have had enough. And then I can figure out the next thing. I had this conversation with Josie the other day because I love about her as someone who is just constantly about, I got to get this done. I'm not doing enough. I'm never doing enough. Her and I, even working on this podcast, I'm like, what do we do to grow it? And she's just like, I think it just happens organically. And it was the most freeing moment. She was just looking at me like, what do you want to happen, Sarah? And I was like, I don't know. I just feel like, I love it so much and I want other people to love it. And she's like, then other people will love it. She just has zero anxiety about it. And I love that because I think she won't buy into this thing that I think both you and I, Laura, bought into for a long time. That is, if we can just make space enough just for the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And you're climbing this ladder and then you get to the top and you're like, the hell do I even want up here?
Do we even want to be up here? And if I don't want to be up here, what on earth do I do?
Yeah, I think I was kind of knocked. I was very much on that trajectory. I mean, I'm only 25, so I guess I could go back to it if I wanted to. But I was kind of
Ooh,
knocked off
baby.
my high horse because I was the kind of person who was like, I'm never going to get married because I don't like society's expectations for wives and women. But then this random guy shows up, and all of a sudden, I'm head over heels.
Mm.
And I'm not a romantic, so I don't know how to even express. I married some guy, right? And
He
he,
says that, but her
Wow.
poetry about him is some of the most, like, literally, I wrote it when I was at their ceremony they did at the start of COVID. I'm like writing down, she wrote this beautiful poem about him, and I'm writing it down, and I'm like, this is so romantic. And she doesn't see that as romantic at all.
I mean, the poetry is. I know how to write it down. I don't know how to express it. I'm too much of a humorist. I
Ah,
should be a comedian. But so I was knocked out when I met him, and we moved in together, and I had all these dreams of going to get my MFA in Ireland and living in Ireland for a while before coming back to LA and being this curator, museum person, or whatever, being in the arts. And I met this guy, and he's like a real adult. Like he's a chemist for like a real paint company with he's gonna make real money. He's gonna be the breadwinner, which really knocked me down because I've always been like, I'm gonna be the breadwinner. I'm gonna have a stay-at-home husband and blah 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 blah. And now the way my life is going, it's I'm gonna probably adopt 10 children and be a stay-at-home entrepreneur for the rest of my life. Because I can't be a stay-at-home mom because I am way too ambitious for that, but stay-at-home entrepreneur, the
I
garage full of crap.
with a garage. My goal is to have a garage full of crap. I think, Laura, once you got that diagnosis, that
Yeah.
really was a moment for you where you transitioned. And then how did you find out about coaching?
So after that diagnosis, I ended up going back to that job, and I stayed until about 3 years ago. So I stayed like another 7 years in that job or longer. But I knew that something needed to change in my life. So I ended up in a Kundalini yoga teacher training program. And at some point in that program, I just got the call to be a coach. I didn't know what coaching was. I'd never had a coach, but Martha Beck had a column in Oprah's magazine. Oh, I thought, that's what I want to do. That's what I'd be really good at. Because all my life, people have come to me with their sad, sad stories, and I've held space for them. And I thought, that's what I want to do. It was a calling, I think, for me. So I started looking around for coaching training programs, and I found that University of Santa Monica had a training program for coaches. But in order to do it, you had to do their master's degree program in spiritual psychology first. And I didn't think that was for me, but I went to an informational evening, and Ron Helnick, who runs the program, said from the stage, I'll never forget it. If you come do this program, in 2 years, you'll have a different job. And you might sit at the same desk and you might work with the same people, but you're going to change so much inside that your job will be different. And I just knew in my gut, like, sign me up, because I needed something to change. So I did that program. I did an advanced program with them called Consciousness, Health, and Healing, which is about how health and wellness in the body is related to consciousness. I did their coaching program. I started taking coaching clients. I fell in love with it. And 3 years ago, I made the leap, and I've been an entrepreneur ever since. And fashion was really, I believe, a calling to me also, because I'd wanted it so much since I was a child. And I believe that as creatives in the world, that we morph and grow and change. And I was called to this work.
I love that. I love that because I think we talk to a lot of people in the season of transition. I mean, everyone always is. And again, this narrative that like you find the thing, you do the thing, and then that's the thing. And then when that's not the thing, I think so often people walk around going, well, what is the thing? And it's not what is the thing, it's who is the person. And that's what I hear you really helping people understand. And I love even the thing like you'll be doing the same job, you'll just be doing it differently. And I mean, as much as I joke around with Joe's, I mean, sitting with her, like I'm like, oh right, I'm not doing this like because this is gonna pay the bills. I'm doing this because I love doing it. We don't have to like nail it, like where this is the thing. Like it's one of my favorite lines in a movie ever is this moment where from Nick and Nora's playlist there that I always talk about it because at the end of this movie, they're like, they've run around, they've tried, they're supposed to go see this band, and he says, or she says to the guy, aren't you sad that we missed it? And he says, no, this is it. And I think that's the like transitional moment when you go, oh, this moment is the moment. Okay, now this moment is the moment, instead of like over the like I got to get to that thing. And I think so often the boss babe mentality of you've got to own it and have that goal and then run towards. I just wish everyone could see Josie's face when I said the word it's boss babe.
Yeah, I like to say I'm not a boss babe, I'm the boss.
I should buy you a bedazzled shirt that says boss babe.
Ooh.
Yeah, you'd never wear that. What do you think is a key when people come to you? How do you, first of all, how do they come to you? What is their like, are they in a state of, I need to change everything, or I can't keep going this way? What is it usually that drives people to start to realize I can't maintain this?
People come to me for a lot of different reasons, but mainly they come to me when they've reached some level of success in their lives. And I'm putting that in quotation marks because I felt I was successful in my life. I had the outer trappings of being successful. I didn't feel successful inside, and I wasn't really fulfilling what is really in alignment for me here. So people come to me when they felt some sort of success on the outside, but inside they're thinking, is this it? There's got to be something more than this. I want something more than this. And I don't know what that is. And I don't know how to get there. And I find when people are in that stage, they're really willing to go in and do the work to figure out, not figure out, it's not about figuring out, but to realize, who am I? Who do I want to be in the world? How do I want to contribute? How do I want to make a difference? What do I want my legacy to be?
Oh gosh.
That's juicy for me. When I get to work with people in that space who are really thinking about more than just what do I want for the next couple of years, like, why am I really here? What is my purpose here?
Do you feel like that is a big, I feel like this year has been raw.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like this year has been raw. I don't have another word for it, but raw in that creatives and people who are just that little bit more tuned in have been going, there's something about this year, from COVID to like the amazing movement of Black Lives Matter to even like you guys remember like the Me Too stuff was happening early in this year. I mean, there has been so much raw 2020. Do you feel like people are asking that bigger question more now?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, there's so many people who are especially questioning their relationship with work right now. People who are losing their jobs are afraid of losing their jobs. People who thought that their jobs were so stable and it wasn't. I mean, my job, I had a hard time leaving because I thought it was so stable and so secure. And everyone at my level in design at that company was laid off because of COVID. Some of them been there over 20 years. So I would have been laid off. So if I hadn't done this, like left and started my own company, I would have been laid off this year. So my job as an entrepreneur is actually more stable than that super safe corporate job that I had. And I think it's interesting for people to realize that the safety and security that they believed are there isn't really there. Like true safety and true security comes from within us. It comes from within us knowing I can make money whenever I want. I can take care of myself. I'm always going to be okay.
Ugh. Like, I think I just need to write that on my like mirror.
Yeah.
That daily, like, I'm going to be okay. And I think this has rocked us to the core. And that's usually when, you know, like at the beginning of all this, I was saying like, listen to the poets, listen to the musicians, give them a minute. They need to process what's happening, but listen to them because some amazing art is going to come out of this year. Amazing art, painful, honest, open art, designers, because they're solving problems, right?
Yeah.
And kind of stepping into that. So if you were thinking about how do people start that, if they're feeling that thing in, what are some of the questions you get them to ask themselves if they're in that process to figure out like whether or not coaching is for them?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I find that especially when it comes to people in their work, so many people are dissatisfied with work and they think, oh, the answer is to get a different job. But I can say in my experience, like all my bosses were terrible. Is that really true? Or was it me? And it was me and it was about the way I was interacting with them, right? So there's so much opportunity in being in a job, even if it's not satisfying for you, in working through all of the opportunities there for you to learn about yourself, for you to grow. So that in whatever you move on to, if you do move on to something, that you move on to something without all that baggage and cleaner, so you can have a better experience. And so some of the questions might be, what do you want to create in your life? Like a lot of people don't even have a vision for what they want to create in their future, a year out, 5 years out. And it doesn't have to be a specific timeline, but without vision, you don't have any idea where you're going. And so how can you make decisions today? I ask people, what are your greatest challenges in your life right now? What do you want to create in your life? What keeps you up at night? What do you worry most about? What do you feel is missing in your life? What did you think would have happened by now that hasn't? Those types of questions can really open people up to, I'm ready to answer some of those questions and I'm ready to get support in doing that.
I'm imagining you sitting across the desk just because of knowing you personally. You're talking to some C-level people that have never been asked about their feelings.
Yeah.
Do you find that super difficult for them to let that guard down because they're still...
And something that's really important about coaching is meeting the client where they're at. So I have a master's degree in spiritual psychology. I consider myself to be a deeply spiritual person, and I bring spirituality into my work, but a lot of the clients I work with don't know that. Right? So I have C-level executives who are really stressed out, and we don't talk about meditation. We talk about, can you take 5 minutes in silence in the morning with your coffee, with no radio, no newspaper, just looking out the window? Because that 5 minutes for them is 5 minutes they're carving out for themselves. They're telling themselves they're important. They're sitting in quiet. And as we know, that's where inspiration can come in, when we get quiet, right?
Yeah, I wonder if that's a little bit of this COVID vibe too, is that we're getting quiet. I just left isolation after having COVID. So fun, guys. Don't get it. I followed all the rules and still got it. So it is a very mysterious and difficult thing. But I will say this, being home and not having my energy and being forced to slow down. And it is a difficult thing if you're a go-getter, but I think it's important. And I think hopefully that's the lesson of this year. I'm afraid that we're going to start back up though. Like, everyone gets the vaccine and we just go running full steam ahead. And that's my fear.
Well, and the truth is everybody has a choice in that, whether they're going to take what they learned from this year, whatever that is, and integrate it into their lives so they have a different experience going forward, or if they're willing to just slip back into the experience they were having before.
Yeah, I feel I've loved COVID. Not like the actual pandemic, but
thanks.
the slowing down I'm a huge fan of. I have been continuously working on my inner peace, as they say. And it's nice to be surrounded, on social media at least, by people who are doing the same, like finally recognizing that they were doing too much, trying too hard, even spending way too much time on social media. And I think it's a good detox, I guess is the word it would be for a lot of people. And I mean, COVID has been really shitty for a lot of people too, but I feel like society as a whole is going to change for the better, hopefully, because now, I mean, with the whole Black Lives Matter thing, with the whole, recognizing your privilege because you didn't lose your job, I feel like people now are going to realize more so that, I don't know, that life's not that serious.
Life's not that serious. That's good, actually. When you've sort of started that process, it's interesting that Josie even used the word detox. So detox, like I think about back in the day when you would start using an acne medication, things would get worse before it got better.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Shut up, I have perfect skin. Do you experience that? Do you think when people begin the process of opening themselves up to this sort of questioning and making space for themselves in a way they never have before, do things get worse before they get better? Like, is it a realization like it was for you that, wait a minute, I don't know that I want to do this anymore?
I don't know that I would say it gets worse before it gets better, but a lot of people aren't in touch with their emotions and couldn't even properly identify their emotions if you ask them, right? So just them opening up to their emotions and starting to get clear about taking that little breath between something happening and them reacting. Like, how am I feeling about this? What's going on for me? What am I telling myself about this? Like that simple little step can make such a difference in them realizing they have choice. So it can be challenging in the beginning of a coaching relationship as a coach if emotions start to come up for people. Absolutely. But that isn't everyone's experience. It really depends on the client and what they're looking for. And the shifts can be remarkable. It's incredible what can happen for people, sometimes in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, I can imagine having done a lot of therapy in my life, not to brag. a lot of my
Weird
breakthroughs.
flex, Joes.
I'm very therapized. A lot of my biggest shifts have come after complete breakdowns. And I just think it's the work that you do is so important because not everybody's going to have a complete breakdown and then be like, oh, I'm angry all the time. But I think people finally sitting in who they are and realizing what they want outside of what they think they want is really the best way to change the world, right? Starting within oneself. So you're changing the world, Laura. I didn't know if you knew that.
Oh, I totally know that. I totally know that. And it's totally true. Like the biggest thing that happens is people like come home to themselves. When people realize who they truly are, like the power that they have in the world, not from a I'm going to take over the world part of way, but the power we have to show up in our loving in situations, to share who we truly are with other people, to hold space for other people. That is so incredible. And when people start to see that in themselves, they don't just see themselves as a cog in a wheel. They start to see themselves as part of something greater. And I think that's when the magic starts to happen.
Yeah, there's a difference between setting goals and setting a vision. I mean, and we all, well, not Josie, because you were a baby, but we all went through like the 90s when they like made everything into like vision casting and paradigm shifting and all that sort of stuff. And it was still just a different way of goal setting. And goal setting, it has its place. What would you say is the sort of the mix of goal setting versus vision casting, and how does that help one move forward? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Absolutely, 100%. So when I work with someone in one of our introductory conversations, we always talk about what they want to create a year out. But it's not just about, I want to make $100,000. It's deeper than that. Like, why do you want to make $100,000? $100,000 is never about the money. It's about security. It's about prestige. It's about something else. So it's getting in touch with, why do I want to create what I want? Finding some enthusiastic, energizing language. I'm sure you all know about affirmations around that. It can help them see where they want to go, not just from a top level, but from where do I want to be emotionally? How do I want to be with myself in a year? Right? I want to show up with confidence in meetings, for example. I want to speak my mind. I want to have impeccable boundaries with myself. I want to show up in my integrity. I want to know that I'm the most important person in my life and act accordingly.
Okay. Whoa. Yeah.
That's the one thing I always get in trouble for saying in my family is like, I love myself and I'm going to take care of myself first. That's really what it is. And in the Mexican culture, that's just not the way it is, right? When you're a woman, you take care of your husband first and then your children. It's like, I don't want to be something to somebody all the time. I want to be something for me. It's about me.
In a lot of cultures, that's the case where the woman takes a back seat and
Well, I mean, I think it's, Laura, I think about a conversation you and I had, and hopefully I'm not telling secrets outside of our conversation, our confidences as a coach and a pastor, but you were sharing with me that you got as specific with yourself as, I want this certain rug in my apartment. And I was like, what? But then, because that rug indicates to me that I'm at a place where I feel comfortable buying beautiful things for myself, where my space is a space I can welcome other people into. And I think it's what's the thing behind the thing. And if we don't pause and ask what's the thing behind the thing, we're just running the rat race and doing what the thing that everybody's told us to do. And there's a loss of self in a way that you don't want a cancer diagnosis to be the thing that gets you there.
No, I wouldn't wish that on anybody, because it changed my life definitely, but it was not an easy journey for me by any stretch of the imagination, as facing one's mortality is never a fun thing.
No, and that's maybe what we're in the midst of for a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people
are figuring out that maybe we don't live forever. And and by maybe, I mean, guys, here's the secret. None of us get out of this alive. None of us.
None of us. Life's not that serious.
That's our next t-shirt. Life's not that serious, Josie. Yeah. I have loved chatting with you. I really absolutely have. I want to ask a question that I know you're going to have a great answer for, which is
because you're cheating.
She's not a cheater, but she does listen to the podcast. But
of course, I knew it's a great podcast. I love it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll take that. That's a 5-star review on iTunes.
Yes.
What is one tangible way that someone can make them space for themselves or others? Like if they're hearing this and they're like, I feel like there's going to be a group of people listening to this and their heart is going to be like, yes. And then they're going to be like, now what? What would you say is one tangible way to make space for yourself and others in this idea of vocation?
Yeah, absolutely. So to me, one of the most important thing that any of us can do as humans is listen to other people, listen to ourselves and listen to other people, truly listen and listen to understand, not listen to respond, not formulating what I'm going to say next or my grocery list, but really listen to other people, truly 100%, because most people are never listened to in that way. And so for us to show up in the world, listen to other people, see them, really see them, and then to turn that lens on ourselves. What do I really want? If we're upset about something, what's really going on with me? Because it's never about the instance that happens. It's not about the boss yelling at us. It's about what we believe about ourselves inside. So being willing to hold space for ourselves and listen inside, what's really going on with me? If this isn't about the situation in front of me, what's the deeper cut here?
Right.
And learn from this.
Right. I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us, Laura, for joining us on the podcast. Now, my next question for you is, how can people get in touch with you? What is the easiest way to get in touch with you?
There's a couple of ways. You can follow me on Instagram. It's very simple, at Laura Foster Coaching. That's also my website. You can go there and learn more about me and reach out to me there.
Great. Yeah, hire her. Give her your money.
Josie's great at marketing.
Yeah, I can see that.
Give us your money. Josie, people can get in touch with us on Instagram at Making Spaces Podcast. They can get in touch with us by listening on any form or just going to anchor.fm/Making Spaces. Leave us a voicemail. We're so bummed. We haven't gotten any in a while. Friends, we know you listen, so leave us a voicemail. We just want to know where your favorite space is. I mean, that's not too much to ask.
Takes 2 seconds. Come on, guys.
Also, you can get merchandise, which is super fun. I got sent a picture of someone in one of our shirts today. So you can go to Society6 / why do I always say / Making Spaces Podcast. Anything else I'm missing, Josie? Where else can they find us?
Well, we now have a new website, thanks to me and Legally. Thank you. It is makingspacespodcast.com. Everything will be on there if you want just one little hub. You can find us on YouTube at just search Making Spaces Podcast, I guess. We have a Patreon, a brand new Patreon. That's right. We want your money and we'll give you stuff in return, of course. You can start off with prints. You can start off with a quarterly Makers merch box. That's right. Makers merch. And you can find that at patreon.com/Making Spaces Podcast.
That was a lot of things, but most of all, thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe, listen, leave a review, and share with us if you got a space maker you want us to chat with, because we'll ask anyone to talk to us.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, friends. I'm going to hit